Good morning, everyone. What a delight and what an absolute pleasure to be here with you at this wonderful occasion. I want to thank Owsley and Sarah and all the people who organized this wonderful conference, and I am certainly honored to be sharing a stage with such luminaries. So this is a great pleasure. Now, all over the world, there are conversations between people of science and people of faith. And those conversations give me hope, because we know that science and religion are the most powerful forces of progress that humanity has ever known. And integrating science and faith, having them work hand in hand, is the only way that we are going to address the most existential challenge we face, which is the challenge of runaway climate change. As all of you know, the hour is now very, very late. We're literally running out of time, and nature is sending us an unmistakable signal on a scale resembling the plagues from the book of Exodus. Record-breaking hurricanes every hurricane season, 500-year floods that are happening spaced out months apart, deadly heat waves, uncontrollable forest fires, and the inexorable rise of the seas. So we have decades left, and I want to underline that word, decades. Decades before parts of our world become unrecognizable, decades before our children and our grandchildren will look back at the world we have now as a lost Eden. So the question for today is, will we listen to this warning? Will we act? And will we do it now while we still have time? The future of God's creation, the future of this planet, depends upon the answers to those questions. So there's 3 points I would like to make in my remarks today. One is that while the hour is late, the world's best minds have figured out how we can prevent runaway climate change. There is a vision and there's a plan. Point 2, that plan is mostly relying upon technologies and solutions that we already have, and it's a matter really of scaling up the political will and the courage to do them. And point 3, as representatives of the world's religions, you have a critical role to play in scaling these solutions up, perhaps the most critical one. So what is this vision? How do we get there? Broadly, it is a vision of harnessing technologies that we have and some that we need to come up with, in addition to committed, mobilized citizens to wean ourselves off of polluting sources of energy, and even to remove some of the greenhouse gases that are in the atmosphere now, to remove them. It's a vision that allows wealthier countries to continue to maintain and grow and enjoy their standards of living, but it's also a vision that allows poorer countries to enjoy that prosperity as well, not by making the mistakes of their more developed neighbors and addicting themselves to fossil fuels, but rather leapfrogging over them, much the way that countries now are not using landlines, not building landlines, they're using cell phones. Now, some people call this deep decarbonization, but that focuses really on what we're against. So I think we should pick a name that talks about what we are for. We're for a clean world economy. So how do we get there? As a starting point, let's start with where we are, and I'm going to talk just for a moment about the Paris Agreement, the agreement that in 2016, virtually every country of the world came to an agreement to, and it has a goal of holding the increase in global average temperatures to well below 2 degrees and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5. So that's the goal, and the agreement contains not just goals, but pledges by almost all the world's countries to take actions on their own to get us towards that. So let's look at this a little bit. That baseline that you see is where we would be at, where scientists predict we'll be at if we do nothing more, if we just continue along the trajectory we're on. And you can see that's a baseline of a 3 to 4 degree centigrade temperature increase. That's a world that none of us want to leave behind for our kids or our grandkids. Now, at the bottom of the gray, the shading, is approximately where we would get to under the Paris Agreement if every country that made its pledge did what it said it was going to do and did it on time. And you can see there's a lot of progress. That gets us under a 3 degree increase. But the sobering reality is this. We have a very long way to go to meet the 2 degrees, and it's very much worth remembering 2 degrees is not the goal. 2 degrees is the guardrail. That's when we start being in the danger zone. So we've actually got to do better than 2 degrees. So we have a long way to go in a very short amount of time. And essentially, to get to that goal of holding the world temperatures to below 2 degrees, we have to dramatically lower our emissions worldwide. Every 10 years that we take to get to net zero reduces the chance of holding that temperature goal. And this graph shows that. So worldwide, we need to be at net zero by about 2060. But of course, we need to recognize that not all countries are in the same position to meet those goals. And so if we want the world to hit net zero by 2060, it is absolutely incumbent upon countries like the United States and Europe that have enjoyed the prosperity associated with fossil fuels, that are responsible for most of the emissions, and that have the technology and the resources. They've got to do it faster. So the goal here in the United States needs to be net zero by 2050. Now, to get to net zero, I want to draw a distinction between 2 potential ways of getting there. One is a bridge, one is a stepping stone. A bridge would be something we would design now with a destination in mind of net zero. And we would try to put this bridge together in such a way that it has a reasonable chance of hitting net zero. Now, I want to contrast that with what we've been doing so far, which is a stepping stone approach, where we do incremental policies. They move us in the right direction, but they don't necessarily get us all the way. And I'll give you an example. If we retire coal plants and we replace those plants with natural gas, that's a stepping stone. It does get us closer to that goal, but it's not going to get us to net zero. And what happens with a stepping stone approach is eventually it doesn't get us the way we have to go. So we've got to build a bridge, not stepping stones. And the bridge has 5 pieces, and I'll go through each one. The first is energy efficiency. That's using energy as efficiently as we can. It's things like LED light bulbs, appliances that use much less energy, fuel economy standards, so cars get more miles per gallon. It's thermostats. It's living in more dense situations rather than having sprawl. So there's many, many different ways of achieving energy efficiency. And the good news in the United States is we've actually done a rather good job of becoming more efficient. This is a chart that shows you that our energy usage in the United States peaked in about 2007, yet our economy is continuing to grow. The other good news is we put thousands and thousands of people to work, weatherizing homes, retrofitting buildings. These are jobs that can't be outsourced, and we've saved money. It hasn't cost us money. We've saved money by becoming more energy efficient. So you might ask, if energy efficiency is so great, why aren't we doing more of it? And the best answer I can give you is energy efficiency is boring. It's not a shiny gadget. It's not a snazzy new technology. So all of us need to make energy efficiency not boring. We need to highlight the virtue of saving energy and using that as a way to heal the planet. So that's the first piece of the bridge. The second piece of the bridge is to take the carbon out of our electricity generation. And again, the good news is here we have options. We have 3 big picture options. We're probably going to need all of them. One is a massive scale-up of renewables, solar, wind, hydroelectric, energy storage. There has been a miraculous decrease in the price of solar and wind energy to the point now where it is competitive in many parts of the country with fossil fuels. So that is an excellent development. We probably can't rely upon renewables to get us all the way. So we're going to also need to preserve our capacity, our nuclear power capacity, and we probably will need to have some fossil fuel plants that are built that can capture and sequester the carbon they emit. And the good news here is we're going in the right direction. This is new US power capacity in the United States. You'll see in 2015 and 2016, solar and wind are winning. So that's really strong, something we should be happy about, something that we can accelerate with policies that we already have in place in many states. Things like putting a price on carbon, national clean energy standards, tax credits, investment in infrastructure. None of it is rocket science. We can do it right now. And the beauty of getting the carbon out of our electric sector is then we can run a lot of things on clean electricity. The most obvious being our cars and our buses and our trucks. This is a picture of a solar panel collecting the sun's energy, converting it to electricity, and charging a car. I would submit to you that this kind of trifecta is the new divine. This is the vision that we need to strive for. And again, some good news. The price of batteries is falling. That's making it possible for people to buy electric cars that can go for an adequate distance. The biggest challenge with electrifying transportation is getting the cost down. So we've got to continue to make cars and buses and trucks affordable. And we've got to solve the problem for people who don't have garages and easy ways to charge up their cars. But again, this is not a matter of coming up with some new technology. This is really about political will, and we can do this. The fourth piece is to use nature as our friend to remove as much carbon as possible. We all know from elementary school that trees do a wonderful job of absorbing carbon dioxide. So in the United States today, about 10% of our carbon emissions are offset by forests. We're gaining forestry about 1 million acres a year. If we doubled or tripled that amount just to bring forested levels back to where they were in 1850, it's estimated that we could offset about 45% of our emissions. But it's also true, worldwide especially, that the trend line on forests is going in the wrong direction towards deforestation rather than gaining. And so we are going to need technologies that can take carbon out of the atmosphere, as strange as that may sound. And that's going to require 2 things. One, we have to think about carbon differently, not as a waste material, but as a resource. And 2, we need a massive worldwide public and private partnership to come up with the technologies that can do this cost effectively. We've done this before. We've done it with the moon launch. We've done it with many human endeavors. I have no doubt that if we set our sights on finding a way to remove carbon from the atmosphere and use it beneficially, we can do that. And that brings us to the last piece of the bridge, which is it's not just carbon dioxide that we have to worry about. There are non-CO2 gases, some of which are actually more powerful in trapping heat than carbon. Things like methane that comes from oil and gas extraction operations and from agriculture. Things like hydrofluorocarbons that come from refrigerators and air conditioning. And fortunately, there are answers to all of these types of gases as well. The technology is there. So those are the 5 sections of the bridge. Many economists have costed this out, and there's a range of estimates, but they generally are in the 1% of world GDP per year to do this. So let me see a show of hands. How many of you would put it 1% of your income in order to save this world from disaster? I think everybody.
You are next. You are next. You are, yeah, you were right.
So there's the vision, there's the plan. We can afford it. So, where do you come in? Helen Keller once said, "Science may have found a cure for most evils, but it has found no remedy for the worst of them all, the apathy of human beings." Religion is the antidote to apathy. Religion draws people together to a higher calling, a more noble purpose. Religion motivates people to confront injustice. And in this case, there is a tremendous intergenerational injustice here of all of us leaving behind a world that's so much worse for our kids and our grandkids. Religion inspires action. Religion encourages stewardship and preservation. And most of all, religion keeps hope alive when the obstacles seem daunting. So what can you do? I would say first, each of you needs to make climate change your #1 issue. And I know that's a big ask because all of you are working on other very important issues, issues of poverty and justice and violence and inequality. And you can't drop all those things, but you have to understand that runaway climate change will make addressing all of those things much, much worse. So make this your priority issue and demand that leaders in this country and worldwide start building that bridge, setting that 2050 net zero goal into law, putting the right people in charge of designing that bridge, having an inclusive public process so all the best ideas about that bridge come to the table, and finding a way to pay for it. And in addition to your political activism, at your own level, there's so much you can do. Have your church or your home buy electricity from carbon-free sources. Put solar panels on your roofs or your churches. Make your next vehicle an electric one or a plug-in. Spend a little more money on the appliances you buy because they will save energy and money in the long run. Don't waste food. Cut down on red meat or eliminate it from your diet. Plant trees and donate money to other countries to help them build their bridge. So I want to end by talking a little bit about Dr. Martin Luther King, in part because he's my personal hero, but also because he understood how important religion is in solving social injustice. And he was asked over and over again, how do you keep going? The odds seem so daunting. And he said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And I think we all know that to be true and have seen examples of it. But when it comes to climate change, the arc is bending in the wrong direction right now. And it will take the combined power of faith and science to bend that arc down and to build that bridge to a clean energy economy. Let's do that together.
Ken, I am left with a great sense of optimism. Even in the midst of President Trump withdrawing the United States from the Paris Accord, why are you optimistic?
Well, one reason is a pragmatic reason. I have to be. I have to be. My job is to try to mobilize and make change, and it doesn't help to, I try to talk honestly about the challenge, but I also try to indicate that there are solutions. In terms of President Trump, you're right, he's trying to pull us out. He hasn't succeeded. There was some unbelievable wisdom in the Paris Agreement in that it requires a full 4 years for a country to pull out.
I see.
And the first effective date that we could actually pull out
So I
happens
see.
to be the day after the election.
I see.
So we're not out of the Paris Agreement.
We're not. But you also spoke about, you've also spoken at other places about the role that you've noticed by CEOs, corporate
Yep.
leaders. Talk a little bit about that as well.
I will, because there's a lot of things that give me hope, and one of them is the business community that has organized and taken it upon themselves to tell the rest of the world that while Mr. Trump may want to pull out of Paris and turn back the clock, the business community is still in this fight. And so you see companies buying 100% of their electricity from renewable sources, investing in energy efficiency, investing billions of dollars in technology development, and starting, although I think they have a long way to go, starting to be an advocacy force as well. But I do want to say they have a ways to go, because if they come to Washington and they lobby a senator or a congressman, you'll see about 10 issues that they want to talk about. Climate change is about 10th. It needs to be first. So they're actually walking the walk. They're not yet talking the talk.
Bishop Catherine, what do you think from your perspective? I was intrigued by a scientist, of course you're a scientist as well, asking the church to be a part of a, quote, secular kind of thing. What do you think about that?
It's not secular. As you noted in your introductory remarks, the creation is where the Bible starts. Unless we are in relationship with what gives life, we're not being faithful people. There are lots of examples right now of faith communities challenging their members to eat less red meat, to fast from meat. That's an ancient spiritual tradition. The Diocese of California has challenged all the Episcopal churches there to put solar on their roofs. And they're close to having done that for every congregation in the diocese. So we are beginning to engage in very concrete ways at the family level, at the household level, at the faith community level, at the larger judicatory level. And we're advocating in Washington.
Wonderful.
Well,
Mary Evelyn, we're going to hear from you in just a moment, but before you start, how does this fit within your concept of us telling a new story? Does that feel like we're starting to tell a new story?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for that wonderful talk. Definitely, because all the religions are participating in this sense that science is giving us a story of evolution. That story is not just a meaningless story. It's a story that situates us in a place of creation place, but for all the religions, a place of meaning, of purpose, of engagement, of matter matters. And if we can get a glimpse that we matter in that context of an extraordinary gift of a 14 billion year unfolding universe, that is exciting, that's empowering, and that gives, I think, the inspiration for the perspiration on the ground.
Wonderful.